the grand timeline of human civilization, there are events that serve as painful scars, moments so brutal, so utterly inhumane, that they force the world to stop and ask, how did this happen? The Holocaust, orchestrated by Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime during World War II, is one such moment. It wasn't just a war crime, it was a systematic, industrialized genocide where over 6 million Jews were murdered solely because of who they were. But the horror didn't stop there. Millions of others, including Roma, Gypsies, disabled people, Poles, Soviet POWs, LGBTQ individuals, and political dissidents, were also persecuted, tortured, and executed in ways too horrifying to fully comprehend. This is not just a history lesson. This is a wake-up call, a reminder of what happens when hatred, propaganda, and authoritarian power go unchecked. Let's dive into the terrifying reality of Nazi atrocities during the Holocaust and why remembering them is more urgent than ever. 1. The rise of the Nazi regime and Hitler's anti-Semitic ideology. The seeds of the Holocaust were planted long before the first bullet was fired in World War II. After Germany's defeat in World War I, the country plunged into economic ruin, national humiliation, and social unrest. Amidst this chaos, Adolf Hitler and his National Socialist Nazi Party rose to power in 1933, offering Germans a dangerous combination of nationalism, scapegoating, and racial ideology. At the heart of Hitler's agenda was anti-Semitism, the irrational hatred of Jews. He blamed Jews for Germany's problems, the loss in WWII, the financial crisis, the collapse of German values. In his twisted worldview, Jews were not just different, they were subhuman, a threat to Aryan purity. This ideology would become the moral justification for genocide. 2. Legalized hatred, from discrimination to dehumanization. Shortly after seizing power, the Nazis began implementing laws that stripped Jews of their rights. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 defined who was a Jew and banned intermarriage between Jews and non-Jews. Jews were fired from public jobs, banned from universities, and forced out of businesses. Public humiliation became common. Jewish children were bullied at school. Jewish homes and businesses were vandalized in events like Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, in 1938, when Nazi mobs destroyed synagogues and shops and arrested thousands of Jews. This legal and social persecution was step 1, a slow, methodical dehumanization of an entire group of people, preparing the population for what would come next. 3. Ghettos and deportations, life behind walls. Once World War II began in 1939 with the invasion of Poland, the Nazi regime rapidly expanded its control across Europe. In occupied territories, Jews were forced into walled ghettos, such as the infamous Warsaw Ghetto. These overcrowded areas were ridden with disease, starvation, and death. Families of doctors, artists, business owners, and students were crammed into tiny apartments with no running water, no medicine, and little food. These ghettos were not just prisons, they were death traps, and the Nazis knew it. Eventually, deportations began. Jews were rounded up, often told they were being resettled, and loaded onto cattle trains bound for unknown destinations. 4. The final solution, death on an industrial scale. In 1942, the Nazis made their intentions horrifyingly clear at the Wannsee Conference. They would not just persecute the Jews, they would exterminate them. This plan was known as the final solution to the Jewish question. It was a bureaucratic, systematic strategy for genocide with chilling efficiency. The Nazis built death camps including Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor, and Belzec, equipped with gas chambers, crematoria, and trained executioners. People were transported like livestock, stripped naked, shaved, tattooed with numbers, and told they were taking showers. In reality, they were being sent to die in rooms filled with Zyklon B gas. At Auschwitz alone, 1.1 million people were murdered. Families were separated, mothers torn from children, the elderly discarded like trash. This was death on an industrial scale, enabled by railroads, Nazi scientists, and willing collaborators. 5. Experiments in hell. Nazi medical atrocities. Some prisoners didn't go directly to the gas chambers. They were selected for something arguably even worse, medical experimentation. Nazi doctors like Josef Mengele, known as the Angel of Death, performed horrific experiments at Auschwitz. Twins were dissected, children were injected with diseases, victims were sterilized, frozen, and burned alive, all under the guise of science. Disabled people, labeled as life unworthy of life, were also targeted in the T4 program, a euthanasia operation where thousands were gassed in hospitals under Nazi orders. This was eugenics gone mad, and it showed just how far hatred can twist the human mind. 6. Resistance, uprising, and underground heroes. Despite overwhelming odds, resistance existed. In ghettos and camps, brave souls risked everything to fight back. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943 saw a group of young Jewish fighters hold off Nazi troops for nearly a month using smuggled weapons. Underground networks like the White Rose in Germany and partisan groups in Eastern Europe spread anti-Nazi propaganda, blew up rail lines, and rescued Jewish families. Even in camps there were rebellion. Sobibor saw prisoners break out, killing guards and escaping into the woods. These stories remind us that even in darkness, human courage burns bright. 7. Liberation, the horror revealed. As Allied forces advanced in 1945, they began discovering the true scale of the Nazi horror. When the Soviets liberated Auschwitz, they found piles of corpses, gas chambers, and warehouses full of shoes, hair, and glasses, chilling remnants of millions of lives lost. American and British troops liberated camps like Buchenwald and Bergen-Belsen, finding survivors who were barely alive, starving, sick, traumatized beyond words. Soldiers wept. Journalists couldn't believe what they saw. The world would never be the same again. 8. Nuremberg, trials and justice. After the war, the Nuremberg trials brought Nazi leaders to justice. Hermann Göring, Rudolf Hess, and others were charged with crimes against humanity. For the first time in history, genocide was officially recognized as a crime, and the world declared that such atrocities could never be allowed to happen again. Yet, justice was incomplete. Many Nazis fled to South America. Others blended back into society. Survivors bore the weight of memory while the world slowly began to move on. 9. Holocaust denial and the importance of memory. Unbelievably, some people today deny the Holocaust ever happened. They call it exaggerated or a myth. This is not just ignorant, it's dangerous. Holocaust denial is a tool of anti-Semitism and hate. That's why education and remembrance matter. Museums, memorials, and testimonies of survivors like Elie Wiesel serve as living proof of the truth. As time passes, we must carry their stories forward. 10 lessons for today. Never again means now. The Holocaust is not just a Jewish tragedy, it's a human one. It teaches us the deadly cost of indifference, silence, and blind loyalty. When a government turns people into others, when fear overrides empathy, and when hate becomes law, genocide becomes possible. In today's world, rising fascism, racism, and authoritarianism make the Holocaust more relevant than ever. We must confront hate wherever it appears, in schools, online, in politics, because the warning signs never change. Learn more about human rights, anti-Semitism, and genocide education. Speak up when you see discrimination, no matter how small. Because remembering isn't enough, acting is what ensures that never again truly means never again.